I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby here with Erika Okvist, who is the hair and makeup designer on Bridgerton. And I think, Erika, one of the things that I think is kind of misleading is people think that you're just, putting nice makeup on people. What do you think the biggest misconception is about what your job is?
Well, I think that people think it's just like you put foundation on, then a little bit of rouge and a little bit of lipstick, and then you're kind of done, ready to go. But it's not like that. The most important thing with this job, I think, is to find the character. And if you can think about, like, a face is so close that every single little detail that you do really counts. Like, for instance, if you see my eyebrows now, I brushed them up. And if I brush them down just on the one eye side here, you can see that it looks like my eye has fallen down in comparison to the other one. So you can do very much with very little. And I think the most important thing for us is to sort of find the character together with the actor and sort of make it believable and make them feel different enough from who they are in their own life, so that when they look in the mirror, they actually feel like, oh, I am Penelope, or, you know, I am Lady Dunbury. I mean, the Queen, you can't really kind of sort of make a misjudgment there. But I think that that's the most important thing, that with very small means to create a believable character and also have, you know, a foundation for why that character should have that type of eyebrow or lip color or whatever it is that you kind of go for. So there is a backstory.
And yet at the same time, I've read that it really is kind of a collaboration, not just with the actor, but also with, you know, the production designers and with how the scene is decorated and how it's lit. How does all that work together?
Well, I mean, we always follow very closely with, like, the design work always starts first with the production designer. So he'll set a note or a tone, as you will, for, like, for instance, a ball. He might have an idea that everything should be gold and silver. And then the costume designer will then follow a note and go like, okay, so if everything is gold and silver, either all the dresses might be gold and silver, or maybe all the dresses should be then black to stand out from the background. This is a choice. And then when she comes up with a shape or a form, then I come in to sort of bridge the gap between the neck and the hair and any kind of flesh that we can see. Because it could be other things as well, like, you know, like somebody's playing a piano forte, well, maybe they don't have long enough fingers, so we might have to just add a little bit of length to the fingernails to create a kind of elegant flow when they're playing. So it is all, I would say it's almost like swimming in a river together and trying to sort of avoid all the obstacles that comes towards you and just be as smooth as possible. It's almost like a symphony.
And you're not only just designing this stuff for the main cast, but this is a show that can have hundreds of extras in a scene. So just logistically, take us through the logistics of how that gets put together.
Well, first of all, the most important thing is fittings. So we start with doing fittings, and the person who is taking care of each character is doing the fittings, and it might be 3 fittings for Lady Featherington's before we kind of get to where we want to be. So when that's happened, I will then rely on that artist to take care of, you know, this actor to sort of recreate the looks that we've come up with all together, you know, because we're never rigid. I think this is very fluid what we're doing. So on the ball day, for instance, when all the actors are in and also all the supporting artists, I will obviously walk around and look at the actors and make sure there isn't small details that we missed, because we're getting up at 3:30 in the morning. I mean, God help my whole team, because, you know, they're really exhausted and tired and be able to do this wonderful work. And then I travel over to where the crowd is being made up, and I walk through all of those looks as well and make sure that every single angle is at a point. So I think before turnover of camera, we could be in from like 4 o'clock in the morning. The turnover camera might be like 9 or something like that. I might have done 10,000 steps just to make sure that I'm there to aid. And, you know, like, you can wake up in the morning and you feel like you're all thumbs and, what's it called? All thumbs? That, you know, and, you know, just aid people to sort of feel that they can produce as beautiful work and feel really creative with what they're doing, so they don't, you know, feel they haven't done the best that they could have done. And that's really my job, is kind of quality maintenance on a big day.
Does the fact that it's the second season, did this particular season, provide a different sort of challenge?
I think what we have to look at with the ton in Bridgerton, there are a small clutter of people who are literally on the top level of fashion in this world. So you can compare them to the Foxes and all of them, the Kardashians or whatever it is, who will never be caught dead looking the same. So the fact that last season was last season and it was beautiful and lovely, but then everybody was like, oh, how can I impress this season? So they'll send all their maids away to, I don't know, Paris or something, and go and get like taught a new look. Or like the Queen, before she got beheaded, not the Queen, but Marie Antoinette and the Queen actually was good friends in real life. And obviously Marie Antoinette was a really big kind of fashion icon. So she might have gone over there and gone like, oi, what are you wearing in Europe now? And certainly the people had the money and the power to go away and do all of that. Then also during this type of time, there was a really big interest for like the old antiques, which was, Rome and Greece, but certainly Egypt. And in Egypt, there was a big pool of both hair pieces and makeup to be pulled from, and the knowledge of that.
And then on top of that, you have, you not only have these returning characters, but you also have the introduction of the Sharma family, and they kind of take center stage this season. And so what was your approach in terms of, having this new family? How did you work to make them stand out?
Well, I think, again, with costume, we find kind of a look DNA, as it were, where if you see this character as a silhouette, you recognize who they are roughly, because there's so many of them. And I feel that you really need to, even though they've got a new look all the time, really sort of feel that is true to the character. But within that, somebody like Kate Sharma obviously needs to have a little journey, because she arrives. She's a very non-nonsense lady. She's certainly got the influences from India. Her look is kind of based on a braid, because in the morning she's not going to wait for any maid to be awake to do her braid if she want to run out and have a early morning ride. And then she comes back in and she really quickly needs to polish herself up. She just twists that plait and put a stick in and goes and look like all pristine. And then when she, and I think this is happening to everybody, when you fall in love, you spend that little more time maybe in your head fantasizing, and like, wouldn't you then sometimes, or even, I admit I did, like forget that little wisp of hair to put it behind the ear because you're preoccupied with thinking about that certain other person. Or you might sit in front of the dressing table and sort of just dab a little extra bit of lip on, going, oh, I wonder if you'd like that. Subconsciously, at least, if you're trying to sort of deny it to yourself. But I think always when you have got a love interest in your heart, you kind of want to appear as lovely to them as possible. So I think that happens subconsciously. And at the same time, it couldn't be as jarring, so that her mother would go like, oh, Kate, what have you just done, And I think with Edwina, it was kind of almost the opposite, because she knew what her road was. She knew, I'm going this way. This is what I'm being brought up to be doing. I'm brought up to be, this perfect wife and perfect hostess. And, I should really kind of be brought up to be the diamond. And then all of a sudden, the road that she thought was like poker straight just totally changed. And then you can see that just makes her grow up a little bit in the end, and she's got less girly appearance, if that makes sense. And I really love it when characters can have a journey, when the visuals helps the narrative. That's probably my favorite thing, is to sort of have a journey, but very subtle for people.
Well, and I like, you almost talk about these designs and the characters, as if they're one. To you, they're not separate. Has that always kind of been your approach?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I feel we're weaving a tapestry, and all the threads are as important. And I always, when I've got a new person in who's, you know, new to the film industry and feels a little bit awestruck, I always go and I say, you know what, if you think about the film industry as a clock, if you take away, I mean, you might have these really big cogs and they're shiny and they're moving, but if you take away the smallest little spring, the clock will not move and the time will not be right. And I think that that's really true. I think that, you know, it's a fluid art form where we touch every single person. We're not separated from sound. We're not separated from lighting. We're not separated from anyone. And I find that fantastic, that the designs that is being created is a collaboration with so many levels of people on so many different ways.
Obviously, we can't talk about Bridgerton without talking about the Queen and the Queen's hair. I mean, it's almost like you expect it every season, every episode, every appearance. You're like, oh, what is she going to have now? Does that actually make your job harder, or do you just try to put that aside and just focus on the scene and the moment?
I love a little bit of punishment. I'm very easily bored, and I think to try and sort of cater for the Queen's wigs to sort of as a surprise moment every time we see her is what really drives me. I want to cater for everybody's taste. I want to cater for everybody's hair texture. I want to cater for as many different cultures that I can within the look DNA that the Queen has had. But I do want every time we see her as a sort of surprise moment. And yeah, I mean, I wonder what she keeps inside the wigs is what I want to know.
Oh my God, I think you just created a subplot for season 3. But along those lines, you know, what is your collaboration, say, like with Golda in terms of, you know, because these are gigantic pieces. I mean, what is the engineering behind them?
So I've got a lovely lady called Emma Rigby, who is a sort of wig expertise, well, our first thing was to try and obviously make it as big as possible, but as elegant within the largeness, which is not that easy, but also not as heavy as, you know, you might think it would be. Luckily Golda is an incredibly elegant lady who she literally glides when she's got that wig on. But certainly some wigs, like the one in the wedding, was a very heavy piece, and she wore it with delight and just looked beautiful in it. But in terms of collaboration, we come up with a main concept that we kind of pre-style into a rough estimate of what we want. And then we do a wig testing with Golda to make sure that the balance of, you know, the face, and I mean, literally what you always have to look at with any hairstyle, if you want it to be flattering, is what does it do to the cheekbones and what does it do to the jawline? Because we all want that to go up to God. So that kind of placement of things like that, you know, we collaborate with her. She might have an idea where she wants to have the hair ornaments and stuff like that. And it's a really close collaboration. And I feel it's really important with all the characters that they've had their say, because they obviously know their character better than anybody else. And they also probably know where that character would go in a certain direction. With Golda's wig fittings, we then also always do a makeup test, because as you know, if you're wearing a black dress or if you're wearing a red dress, the reflection straight back up into your face is quite different. So you might have to have a totally different makeup palette for the different wigs, because the wigs are so big that they literally will reflect down into the face. So if she's got a white wig or a dark wig or a pink wig or a blue wig, in combination with whatever it is that she's got in clothing, it really, really makes a huge difference what choices of colors that we are putting on her.
I want to just give a little, because I think when we look at the male characters, I think we tend to look at the female characters and we're like, oh, look at all there's so much to see. Whereas the men, it's a little bit more subtle, but I feel like there's just as much attention given to the looks of the men as it is to the women. Am I wrong about that?
No, that's totally correct. I think that I like to honor everybody's skin. you know, I want it to look like as glowing and as most beautiful as it possibly can. And I think that everybody deserves, you know, the time it takes to really kind of like make them look as best as they can. And I also think on a show like Bridgerton, where everybody is somebody's passion, you kind of want to give them that kind of visual candy for every single person, within, you know, the character DNA, as we discussed before, but also you always have to have the character, because a lot of our characters has got places to go in other seasons, so you have to hold back the reins on some things, because we need to have somewhere to go with those characters so that they can develop. And so it's a balance, because very quickly all you want to do is like do the very best that you can, but then you go like, oh no, can't, got to wait for this, have to wait 2 seasons before we can do this.
Well, and you know, I'm wondering, just from your perspective, what is it about this show that you think has touched a nerve with viewers the way that it has?
I mean, number one, I think visually it is iconic. I think that the last time we saw anything like this was My Fair Lady, who was supposed to be set in the turn of a century, but actually it was just, you know, fashion from the 60s kind of a thing. And it's still an icon because that's what they did. And I think this is what Bridgerton is. They literally taken Regency and created it to their own kind of almost like a brand. But they also discussed the things that people think about a lot. I mean, and especially I think during lockdown and everything, we just needed something that was lighthearted enough, but still gave us, you know, food for thoughts, and was fun, you know, and was outrageous, and was like secretly, even though that was like horrible, I really liked that. Or, oh my God, I wish I could be as evil as Cressida. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's that kind of a thing where it just pricks hole on everybody's potentials. You just go down to the core of how we are, because we are just, you know, we're people who wants to love, we want to have fun, we want to, you know, and we recognize ourselves, I think, in these characters, but with really outrageous outfits. But you know, corsets are back. There are people wearing puff sleeves bigger than your head already out in fashion. So, you know, I think it's been people really want it, and maybe want to look like that themselves.
Oh, if I could just spend a minute in one of the Queen's wigs, I can't even imagine.
I know.
Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for more interviews with contenders throughout the season. Erika Okvist from Bridgerton, a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening. Bye.